This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get flat. I got 6 jobs. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get down. I don't get it. I don't get down. I don't get it. I don't get tired. Get flat. I got 6 jobs. I don't get time. Full-time artist. Ex-Guardy said grind harder. Learn from every time you ever fail. If it never failed, just grind smarter. Iron sharpen.
Welcome in, everybody, to the latest edition of Two Bad Hombres. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Well, if you've listened for the last month or so, you've recognized that a lot of our podcasts that we've recorded have been via Skype, whether it be Adam and myself on Doc and Jock, Vito's new podcast, Sundays with Dominic and Vito. He's doing great interviews weekly in the all around town. If you've noticed, we've been doing them via Skype, but after a month at home, I just couldn't take it anymore, man. I missed the studio. I missed the nice setup that I established, and so I just had to get out of the house on this Saturday. So I'm recording this, and I'm going to drop it and release it as soon as I'm done here. So thank you for spending the next half hour with me. I'm John Macaroon, Two Bad Hombres. Thanks, everybody, for subscribing to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you're new, we've been around since 2013. Myself and Adam Strozinski started a podcast network, and now, because of the success, the following, the great number of subscribers that we have all across the podcast landscape, I now work with Maven and Sports Illustrated, and I put out content for the Detroit Lions in regards to podcasting, in coverage of the Detroit Lions. I got a great crew of 3 other writers that put out content every single day, and it's helped me to get through this whole COVID-19 pandemic. But to start, to be quite honest, haven't indulged in any watching of old Detroit sporting events. To be honest, just hyper-focusing on the Detroit Lions and the upcoming NFL draft has been well enough for me to satisfy my sports craving. Because of the fact that, you got to remember, I've been podcasting now 5 days a week for the better part of the last 5 years. And you notice that a lot of the topics have been in regards to why the teams in town struggle, a lot of things not going well. So for me, this has been like a massive reprieve, a happy time. I've been focusing on the Lions, and we'll talk about that in and of itself, because that's just like an exercise in beating your head against the wall. But for me, a massive Detroit sports fan, a podcaster, a guy in the media covering the Lions, not having to watch the Pistons and Wings and Tigers stink it up in their various arenas has been great. I think it's kind of like a major flush, when you're, plumbing gets all backed up, if you're married and your wife gets all her hair down the drain and you're just like, what the hell's going on? And you're in the sink and you're shaving and all of a sudden the water's not going down and you plunge it and all of a sudden all her hair comes up and you're like, oh, it just needs a massive flush. And in the world of Detroit sports, that's what we needed. Look, I'm not clamoring to see 15 games of the Pistons. There's nothing I want to see there. The Red Wings, a couple young guys, no problem. But if they cancel those 2 seasons and just jump ahead to, the draft and rebuilding, I'm all for it. I don't miss them at all. Nothing. I'm not clamoring for it. I thought I would miss it a lot more, but I've just indulged in so much other stuff. I've gotten into podcasting more in terms of listening to the great content that everyone's doing around town with the Lions and a bunch of other podcasts as well, getting into true crime podcast. A lot of people who do the comedy ones are great as well. So for me, there's so much other content to take in that I don't miss the 2.5 hours of screaming at the television and wishing that, the freaking Jimmy Howard would not give up so many bad goals and the Wings defense could play better in their own zone. And unfortunately, Howard's tenure comes to an end meekly. He's gone. He's not going to be brought back. And his time in Detroit ends pretty much the same way his career came in. Not much to speak on. He came in, did his time, and he's gone. And not much to speak on in terms of significant playoff success. And it's really disappointing. And one day, Adam and I will dive deeper into why Jimmy Howard's Detroit Red Wing tenure was not as good. But I don't miss the Pistons. I don't miss that brand of basketball where, Coach Casey brought him up to speed in terms of jacking up a bunch more threes, but they weren't making them at the proper clip. I didn't want to see a bunch of older veterans that were broken down going out there on the floor and acting like an NBA team. Finally, the Pistons recognized that it wasn't going to work. And I remember distinctly sitting there at Media Day, and I'm looking around and some of the questions that were being asked, and Ed Stefanski was addressing the media, and they were talking like there was going to be some optimism. And I think that a lot of the tone of that Media Day was about load management and how they were going to utilize Blake Griffin. Well, guess what? Blake Griffin, a guy that has a prolonged history of injury, well, he's not around. And this is a wasted season for him, and he's only getting older. And the Pistons struggled mightily, and that's a wrap. They sold, which is fine. I had no problem with that in regards to the fact that the Pistons finally decided to tear it down, and now full tank mode, which I think was a season or two way too late. You could have traded Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin last year and gotten way more. But look, I'll take it. Addition by subtraction. No love lost here on the podcast for Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond, and they're gone. So I don't miss the Pistons one bit. The Tigers, look, they were going to struggle. They were going to struggle mightily in 2020. So if they delay it till June, July, I'm a credentialed media member with the Tigers. I'm free to go down and cover the team. But I think obviously there's a little bit more optimism in terms of the baseball team, but they were going to lose up a plethora of games as well. They're in the midst of a rebuild, and we were going to dive in, me and Vito, on the Tigers Talk podcast, a little bit more on the Tigers and their development. Unfortunately, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, Hall of Famer, Tiger legend Al Kaline passes away. So that brought a somber note to Detroit, and we've been reflecting a little bit on his greatness and his tenure as a Detroit Tiger. Check out Vito's Tigers Talk podcast on Wednesdays. He does a great job breaking down baseball. Follow him on Twitter at Vito Jerome. But in terms of the current roster, the current state of the Detroit Tigers, hey, a couple extra months before they start has been fine for me. And so when I see on Twitter those that are clamoring and desperate to get back to watching sports, look, I've been heavily involved with the Lions in the NFL, so I'm getting my indulgence of sports. I'm getting it out there, and I'm able to get my fix just enough by covering the Lions and reading what the analysts and what I think about how the team is going to address the upcoming draft. So just covering the Lions has just been amazing for me in order to be able to get my fix and kind of keep some sense of normalcy. And it's been a interesting time in regards to the next question that I think people wonder is, when should sports kind of return? I mean, the WWE was considered essential by Florida, so they're conducting business but without fans, and you're starting to kind of see a clamoring, now around the middle of April, and we're getting a sense that people are getting a little antsy and they want things to return back to normal. And I definitely get it. Look, I lasted a month at home. I got my ass right back to the studio, and I just needed to get back to some normalcy and to see and to record a podcast here at the office. I missed it tremendously, and I understand those that want to get back to normal, but we got to do it safely, and we can't rush. We cannot, rush and get things back before it's proper, because we don't want to continue this spread. I could see sports continuing, but I'm not a fan of sports continuing without fans, especially in watching the WWE. It's been weird and awkward, and it's been a little different in terms of viewing. So I would not be in favor of sports returning unless it's back to the way it is. I don't want to see baseball in Arizona where these athletes are holed up in a freaking hotel. I don't want to see that. I want to see it be back to normal. I want to see it be the way it was when we all knew it. And especially when you watch the WWE, things are just different. Me and Adam, we host a wrestling podcast on Fridays, and we just have noticed that it's not been as fun. It's not been as good with without fans. The vibe is not there. So I don't want to see any sports really without fans. I think we can just be patient. For those of you that are clamoring, that just have to have golf, that just have to figure out a way to get out of the house, what's wrong with your relationships? You're not having fun? Just, me and my family, what we do is we pull up the trunk. My sister comes by. She's 10 feet away. We pop open some alcohol. We laugh. We make fun of each other. We're connecting socially. And I think it's been great in regards to reconnecting with family members just in new ways. I see a lot of people doing Zoom meetings. If you're desperate for sports, I don't know what to tell you. I think you're missing out on some things. There's been some great documentaries on Netflix, great content all over the internet. Check out YouTube, listen to podcasts. There really is a lot more out there than sports. A lot. Check into the NFL a little bit. You can check into a little bit of other things that maybe are going on in the world of sports, but you can get into kind of the past history. I know a lot of people are excited about the Jordan documentary, and I can't wait to dive into that. But if you're a fan of Detroit sports, I'm wondering, message me at Detroit Podcast. What do you miss most? What sport do you just absolutely, really, really miss? Because for me, again, not missing many, many sports. And I just, I'm hoping that when everything kicks back off, that we can kind of get back to, whether it be in the fall or whether it be next year. I'm just hoping for the opportunity to kind of get a sense of normalcy when it happens. I just am also not one of those people that is rushing to reopen everything. Just take it safe, take it slow, operate in the manner in which is the safest. And that's what I'm hoping for, is that everyone's safe, that everyone's happy, that everyone can enjoy the things that they at least have control of. Have some fun, connect with people in this new era. And I think it's interesting the new ways in which sports are now covered. You see all the television shows where all the hosts are at home, and you're seeing all the 3-box shows. All the hosts are in separate locations, and everyone's having to be brought on via Skype and via the new way of kind of broadcasting. And that's just the way it is until everything in the world, until everything opens up again. That's just the way of the new world. I've liked it. I've enjoyed it. I've simply, quite frankly, in the job that I'm in, I love the fact that I can do all the teleconferences with the Lions all over the phone. Everything's done via the computer. I can sit and type in the comforts of my home or in the comforts of my studio, and I can do my work. So I absolutely am grateful for the opportunity. Before I go into the Lions a little bit, I'm grateful that in the situation I'm in with Maven and Sports Illustrated, I know there's been a bunch of layoffs and furloughs. I'm grateful. I have to express this, guys. I'm grateful for the readership and the following that, this audience that we've cultivated has supported. And I'm grateful in this time that I think I don't talk about it too much because of the fact that, hey, I just want to get to work, I'm a kind of guy that's like, hey, okay, we did a good article. How do we do the next one better? How do we get to the next day and do the next podcast and just keep it moving forward? But sometimes you just got to sit and really appreciate what you got, And I appreciate those that reached out amidst some layoffs and asked, hey, is everything okay? Are you still working? And yes, I'm still going strong. I'm still handling my business, and everything's still good for the podcast and for myself, Maven, and Sports Illustrated in my relationship with the company. So everything's going good. I'm really happy. I'm doing my work, putting out content, and I thank you for receiving it in the best way possible. Thank you so much for putting us in the top of the echelon of the SI sites. You guys are reading it, and you love your Detroit Lions content, and I love bringing it. I love working with Logan, Vito, and now our intern Dakota. He's doing amazing work. So in that spectrum, I appreciate it. I always want to show love. Thank you for going over to the Sports Illustrated All Lions site where we just talk about the Lions. We break it all down. Good news, bad news, breaking down the upcoming NFL draft, talking about the past season, the upcoming season, the entire history of the organization. I'm blessed to be able to have pretty much the free reins to just put out any content I want, irregardless of any agenda or irregardless of having to worry about really anyone chiming in that has no business to chime into my business. So I'm happy with how everything is going, and that's how I look at it. One day at a time. It's a blessing to be able to be participating in the sports media in Detroit. I always love it that you guys put a podcaster back in 2013. You listened, you supported, and you just let me live my dream and let me take my friends along with it. So you've allowed me to work with people that I want in the manner in which I want, and the free reign has just been amazing. I hope my excitement comes through this microphone. I'm in a studio that's just been made possible thanks to you guys, with great microphones and jerseys and memorabilia and all the memories of all the fun times we had with this podcast. I hope you recognize how much I love it, how much I value podcasts and what it's done for me in the world of sports media. And now you see them. You see all the great podcasts that are done by all the media sites, by all the great outlets. It's now podcasts are an ingrained part of the culture, and I'm so happy to be part of it. And to be covering the Lions has been amazing. And to turn our attention to the hometown football team, Bob Quinn, he was, one of his rare interviews, 50 minutes via Zoom video conference on Friday. Of course, they would schedule it 9:30 in the morning. Well, I woke up at 9 and ready for it. So I was participating and watching along, really getting a sense of what he was talking about. And obviously, to break it all down, it was pretty professional, obviously talking about the team and in the relationship with COVID, how the team is going to handle the number 3 pick. Are they going to be looking to move down? So Bob Quinn, quite frankly, was honest, and he gave his opinions, and seeing him on Zoom was fascinating to see some of the pictures there and to kind of put out a report and kind of break it all down. My instant analysis was, okay, it wasn't really spectacular in terms of a lot of groundbreaking type stuff with regards to what they're going to do in the draft, but quite frankly, it's the interesting nugget was the fact that he kind of wants to get the deal done. If there's going to be a trade, to have it done before the draft. He wants to have that locked up so there's not a lot of pressure, because obviously it's going to be tough. He's going to be in his basement. It's going to be a different setup. So maybe making a deal that way might not be the same, might not bring Quinn the same comforts that he's used to. I'll play a clip here of Bob Quinn and kind of how he addressed it. He discussed and was asked, one of the early questions was, what are you going to do with that 3rd pick? Kind of give us a little bit of your sense of how that's going to be handled, and I'll play that here briefly. But overall, I think the interesting nuggets are obviously that, thank goodness, nobody on the Lions has COVID-19. The IT setup for the draft should be okay. I know all of you out there that are joking, and I was out there doing it too, saying that, if there's going to be a team that has a total blackout internet outage, it's going to be the Lions. Right there, number 3, all the phones will be dialing, and, it'll be busy, and Bob Quinn's internet will go out, and Matt Patricia's, won't be able to put it in, but there's going to be fail-safes, there's going to be pauses, they can text, they can send a message, it's going to be straightforward. The Lions will not jack up the execution of the selection. The thing you got to be worried about is they're going to potentially jack up who they're going to select, and you're going to hear debates in regards to what position the Lions should take, what position, who the Lions should take, what is the best area for the Lions to draft in the 2nd round, 3rd round. Look, if you're skeptical of Bob Quinn, you have every right to be, okay? Everyone that's reviewed his last couple drafts will realize, okay, 2019 was a little bit better than 2018. 2018 was a lot better than 2017. 2017's draft, he's going to regret. 2016 was a little passive. His first 2 years, he really struggled and cost the team mightily as a result. You don't get do-overs. So when you take a Jared Davis and you realize what he's bringing to the table, unfortunately, that's bad. Tease Tabor, unfortunately, another high-round draft pick that doesn't pan out. So you don't get a lot of opportunities to hit on first-round picks. 2019, not saying it's a bust, but when you take a tight end and the first year he doesn't see a lot of action because he's injured and his numbers don't reflect the spot that he was taken, you're going to start to put a lot of heat on Bob Quinn. So I'm very skeptical that he can do the job. I'm skeptical that he can build relationships with other organizations other than the New England Patriots? Is he going to make a deal eventually, is he going to pull the trigger and make a deal to trade down to get the extra pick? That's going to be the big question I think that everybody wants, is if you're going to take Okudah, fine. If you take him at 3, I think you're going to have a large amount of people, a large amount of the fan base not going to be happy because there's an opportunity to, there's a couple players that some organizations want. And you got to make the deal. You got to move down and get hopefully another second round or third round pick and secure more draft capital. I think that's the prime A goal for the Detroit Lions, is to take Okudah, but take him at 5, or hopefully a win-win scenario, you get an extra pick and you don't go much further down than 6. The case, some of the scenarios that you're starting to hear a little bit of whispers of that could freak you out, and you should be freaked out, is how far back are the Lions willing to go? Would they go down to 6, 7, maybe even as far as 9, I believe, with Jacksonville, and then take a lineman? Could that happen? Could they go and secure an extra first-round pick to take a running back in, picks 19 through 32? Could they do that? How soon are they going to be willing to go and select a player on offense, an impact player? So it's going to be fun, a fun week, and I hope you tune to SI and Detroit Podcast as we break it all down. But, my confidence level with Bob Quinn, not the highest, but I do think that he is among one of the 2-3 GMs that must produce. He has got to put together a healthy 9 selections and handle business. Maybe make it 10, make it 11. Be aggressive. Turn some of those picks that you trade into multiple picks in the same draft. Okay, if you want to trade one of the picks from Philadelphia for 2 more picks in the 4th and 5th rounds, do it. Use your ability and hopefully some ability to scout talent and pick up a bunch more players, because this team in 2020 is going to need it. Again, not a weekend goes by without another player kind of talking down again on the organization. This time it's Glover Quinn talking on the radio, calling Matt Patricia arrogant. Bob Quinn said, look, I don't have a problem with that. He took the PC approach, which I think was excellent in regards to just handling that. He said, look, the free agents that we signed, a lot of them called and said, hey, I want to play for Matt Patricia. And, good luck selling that to those that listen to it. But I will say this in regards to Bob Quinn. Very measured, able to answer the questions, very much able to navigate a presser for any length of time. He's able to talk a nice game. No problems there. Nothing that he said was really out of order. Another interesting nugget here before I play the clip was the fact that he talked about Big V and potentially liking the versatility, and maybe even, which is why I talked about the fact that they could take an offensive lineman early. They could slot Big V at guard, and then that would open up the opportunity to draft the replacement for Rick Wagner. So it might not happen in the early rounds. I think if you do see a lineman, it could happen as early as a second round, maybe in the mid-third round, fourth round as well, in the mid-tier, because there's a lot of upper echelon talent there, as well as if you see the offense, you could see a wide receiver taking in the middle portions. But I do agree with the pundits that it's probably going to be defense early on because of how many needs there are along the interior of the defensive line, to the replacement of Darius Slay. So odds on, if you want my honest opinion on what I see, I don't see the Lions taking 2 at 3. I think, if this is the one chance you get to hear my opinion on it, I think they're going to take Okudah, but hopefully they're going to trade with Miami to get, what's the lowest you take? Maybe even a second rounder in this year's draft. Hopefully you can do more, but my confidence is not there that Bob Quinn has enough leverage to make it happen. But we'll see if teams love Tua and Herbert, and if teams love Tua and Justin Herbert enough to get into that bidding war. Does anybody want one of those players bad enough to be willing to give up some things for the Detroit Lions? But I do see them trading back and taking and selecting Okudah, and then addressing defense further, whether it be that Neville Gallimore, whether it be another solid defensive lineman. I do see that happening with the first couple picks. Now, if you get lucky enough to take and earn and secure another first-round pick, then I'm open to a wide receiver, a running back, address the offense a little bit. Picks 19 through 32. I have no problem if the Lions were to go out there and get DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor. Go handle your business. But in the mid-rounds, there's an opportunity to select, an AJ Dillon, Cam Akers, Vito profile. So I'm okay with that as well. So I can't wait for the draft. Please stay tuned. It'll be fun. You'll get the unfiltered take here at the podcast because I am, obviously somebody that doesn't have a filter, and we don't have to. That's the one thing, that's the blessing we've had at this podcast is we've been allowed for 6 years to have free reigns. I can't believe. The one thing I guess I would say is if you're blessed enough to be your own boss and you're blessed enough to have the opportunity to have some free reign over your work, it's an amazing feeling. It's an amazing feeling to just be able to turn on the microphones, record a podcast, blast away for 30 minutes and have a good time with it. And it's an amazing opportunity that I have, and one in which I don't take too lightly. I just love having the opportunity here to talk about the Lions and the draft, and we'll get down deep dirty and more into it as the week progresses next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Look for the videos, look for the SI National Breakdown. I just can't say enough good things for what Maven and Sports Illustrated were able to do for me because they invested in me. They said, hey, can you do X? And I said, yes, I'll do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D. And they were like, wow, for what you do, remember, I'm covering sports in addition to running a complete podcast network, in addition to multiple other projects that I'm doing. So to have that level of success, not putting 100,000% into it has been amazing. And I can't wait to put more into it because the investment now has been there. They've said, wow, this is what you can do with this amount of time allotted. What if you did that? What can you do with maybe some more hours spent? And you know what I'll do. I'll deliver. Here, like I promised, here's Bob Quinn's thoughts when he was asked what he could do with the number 3 pick.
Yeah, obviously, with the number 3 pick or wherever we end up picking, like hopefully the idea is to get an impactful player. And I think if there's a number of players up in that top of the draft that we feel good about, we'll see what happens next Thursday. But I feel like that's the goal, and I think we have enough guys in that range that we think we can do that. In the second part of your question, I would say, we went through our normal process. It was just a little bit different. So, our goal is to get, impactful players throughout the draft, whether they're starters in the middle rounds or just backup and role players and special teams players later in the draft. So, our goals haven't changed. The circumstances have, obviously, but, we can't use that as an excuse. We have to go out there and do the best of our ability to draft grade the players, evaluate the players, and then, put them at the correct place on the draft board. So next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, when it's our time to pick, we feel comfortable with the selection. I think, obviously we can't replicate our draft boards in my, small home office here. So all the draft boards, the needs boards, all those things will be emailed. They'll be printed. They'll probably be screen shared on some platform that we're still evaluating which one we want to use next week, but we have 2 good options that we're kind of narrowed it down to.
That's what he thinks. I do believe they'll get an impact player, hopefully in the top 5. Hopefully he really steps it up and has solid, because, this is a new way of drafting that everyone's going to be at home. This is going to put an onus on quality draft analysis. And if you're someone like me that's skeptical, teams that have better GMs and better scouting will probably have an advantage this year because of the fact that there's not been the same level of evaluation. You can't lay eyes on it. You can't evaluate the same way. So it's going to be a fascinating look at how this all goes down. Please stay tuned to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network as we put out content every single day that we can. I think we're running shows Monday through, every single day. Potentially Saturday might be the lightest day. Saturday and Tuesday, but every single day we try to put out as much podcast content that we can. We're located anywhere your favorite podcast is available. Go and search Detroit Sports Podcast or on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. That's where you can just click and find and push, on demand any show that you want. Or if you want to subscribe, then the podcast will find you. You don't got to do nothing extra, but subscribe to Detroit Sports Podcast like the thousands have in the last 6 years. And then when a new show pops up, all you got to do is hit refresh and boom, you get your daily dose of Detroit sports in an uncensored, unfiltered, and very highly entertaining manner. I'm John Macaroon. This has been Two Bad Hombres.